In this video, we're reacting to the strength and conditioning methods of Mike Tyson. Hello everybody, welcome to Boxing Science. My name's Danny Wilson, strength and conditioning coach and co-founder of Boxing Science. And in this video, I'm going to be reacting to the strength and conditioning training methods of the legend of the sport, Mike Tyson. He was one of the most ferocious punchers and heavyweights in boxing history, and now he's making his comeback at 58 years old against Jake Paul on November 15th in Texas. Even though it's a big fight and there's a lot of controversy around it, it's been quite interesting to see what training Mike Tyson is doing to prepare his body for battle at 58 years old. So we're going to be looking at that, but it would be a disservice to Mike Tyson if we're not looking at how he trained when he was in his prime. We're going to start off this video by looking at some of the old school training methods. Then we're going to look at the new school training methods and also provide you some alternatives so you can train like Mike Tyson in your training program. So let's take a look at some of these old school training methods. Very little on the internet based on like strength and conditioning exercises. Obviously, strength and conditioning wasn't a big thing back when Mike Tyson was in his prime in the late 80s and early 90s. How did he become so explosive and being able to punch so hard? A lot of his boxing training, the style of his boxing training, working in them explosive bursts obviously help, but obviously it's a lot down to genetics. You only got to look at early photos of Mike Tyson at 14 and 16 years old. It was built like a man. His explosive nature was down to genetics, but also this was optimized through his boxing training. If you look at his bag and his pad routines, all focus on working in them high intensity bursts. This is something that you don't see that often in boxing training when somebody's on the bag, so they're kind of working through a 3-minute round, working to try and last that 3-minute rounds rather than working in them 5 to 6 second bursts that Mike Tyson does on the bags. Because he is doing this repeatedly and having a large amount of rest in between it, this is really increasing and optimizing his strength and speed and his explosiveness as well. So working in bursts can really tap into them lactic stores, which are really important for producing speed and power in high intensity bursts. However, when you're doing this repeatedly, this can increase the amount of lactate that's in the muscles, which basically make you feel really fatigued. And with explosive fighters and more muscular fighters, especially heavyweight fighters, this is more important to try and control. In this day and age, what we'd be looking to do is improve his muscle buffering capacity and trying to control that lactate accumulation. This means that he can work in these high intensity bursts for more prolonged periods and also repeat that more often. Even though that this benefited him as a strength and power athlete, also affected probably his conditioning over a 12-round distance. Other things that he did in terms of trying to make him faster and more explosive, he worked on the speed ball, he working on the bags, working in bursts, also his incredible skills on the jump rope. Many clips of Mike Tyson skipping, something that you don't see many heavyweights doing these days, and also at the speed and the ferocity that he was doing it in. Short ground contact times really focus on improving his reactive strength, and this improved his ability to really jump through the shots, jump through the feet, jump through the lower body to produce that power. A lot of these methods are old school, but can have direct influence on ability to punch hard. Obviously at Boxing Science, we look to try and improve strength, speed and power using weights, using loaded jumps, using plyometrics, but there's a lot of old school training methods such as working in high intensity bursts on the pads and the bags, working on the speed ball, skipping, contributed towards Mike Tyson's power that you can start implementing into your training routine. Also, something really interesting in his old school training is his neck training. Now, Mike Tyson had one of the biggest necks in boxing history, and this is down to a lot of his neck training. Now, these neck rolls here are actually quite hard to look at, especially like when he's like talked about like his neck training in recent times, when he's saying about all the spinal issues that he had.
Your back is broken, spinal.
The neck is something that you want to try and protect and not work through excessive loads, especially through them compromised positions that Mike Tyson was doing there. In neck training now, what you're looking to do is to try and keep it in line with the spine, looking to resist loads isometrically, and then also you can challenge the eccentric, but making sure that it's in a controlled fashion. Rather than these neck bridges, a lot of your body weight through the neck in a compromised position. In the short term, this is obviously going to get your neck strong. In the long term, this can end up leading to some pretty serious injuries. So even though Mike Tyson had a really strong neck and really benefited him, in the long run, it's not going to be great for you guys to be using. So with your neck training, try some of these exercises that we've been using in the cutaways for a safer way to try and increase your neck strength for boxing. So another thing that we've seen from his old school training methods is his attention to developing core strength endurance. Now this is really important to improve core strength and core musculature, because we found at Boxing Science that increased trunk muscle mass is the biggest contributor towards the punching action. The reason why is because it's the main key, the main link through the kinetic chain as we're transferring that force from the lower body through the trunk through to the fist during a punching action. Now you can see this with Mike Tyson, who was very thick around his core and also relied a lot on rotational power to deliver them knockout punches. Mike Tyson really works on improving the musculature around his core through doing hundreds, if not thousands of sit-ups during his routines. He also did a lot of Russian twist training, which is important for rotational power work. And during his later career, he was doing a lot more kind of explosiveness to the core, not just working on improving the muscle mass and the core strength endurance, the robustness of the core. He's also working on that explosiveness. And this is something that he's started implementing into his new school training methods. So let's transition now into having a look at his new school training methods and having a look at this interview here when he's talking about the implementation of strength conditioning that he used later on in his career.
Later in my boxing career, I started using weights, doing a lot of benching and doing sprints. Yeah, a lot of abs, everything. It was just a beautiful time in life.
What would you do for abs?
Throw the medicine ball back and forth, the medicine ball. This, and I would do 2,500 then.
When we started adding core work in, it was a concept of not just the core shred workouts, which we do have for the abs, but also the stabilization.
It's not about working hard, it's about working smarter now.
So that last line there is exactly how he needs to approach his training to Jake Paul. It's not about working hard, it's about working smart. His 58-year-old body isn't the same as when he was 18 through to his mid-20s. He needs to adapt his training to being an older athlete now, not going to be able to work at the same high intensities. He's not going to be able to expose himself to too high training loads. And also he needs to be looking at recovery as well. So with older athletes, it might be a tactic to be using more higher volume, lower intensity stuff, because it's not going to be as impactful on the joints. It's not going to be as fatiguing where you need an increased recovery time from, and you can remain more consistent without reducing that likelihood of illness, injury, or fatigue. So let's take a look at some of the training techniques that Mike Tyson has been using. So one thing that I've seen Mike Tyson use is off-feet conditioning, whether that's doing med ball slams, whether that's doing the assault bike, or the ski erg. This is a really good tactic because the last thing that Mike Tyson wants to be doing now is doing some high intensity sprints. As you can see in this clip here, him sprinting, it's not exactly the greatest technique. It's not getting the optimal hip extension. His legs are going all over the place. And if he's doing this on a hard surface for prolonged sets, this is just going to be damaging his joints, whether that's the lower body or his back. We know that he's had some back issues in the past.
Spinal.
If you're trying to improve and increase high intensity performance, you're not going to be able to achieve that through running. So doing the assault bike, doing the ski erg, really good. What I would say is probably going towards more high volume stuff and more endurance based work, because we've seen across the research that accumulation in older athletes is a lot less. So basically them high intensity stores are going to be reduced. That's why you see more older athletes going towards more endurance based sports. With Mike Tyson's training, I'd be probably looking to go a little bit more high volume and going towards more endurance based work. Other tactics could be used, such as like BFR training, something that I'm going to be talking about for strength training, and also using like altitude training as well. So using altitude training via an altitude tent or altitude mask, this could help increase the cardiovascular demands whilst reducing the amount of impact force that Mike Tyson's getting exposed to. So a few little tactics that he could be using, but very smart from the team to be working more off-feet conditioning rather than doing high intensity running. So here Mike Tyson's using some electro pads onto his muscles. Now this can help stimulate muscles involuntary rather than voluntary. So voluntary contraction, your brain is sending signals to the muscle to create that muscular contraction. With electro pads, involuntary contraction is basically they're sending the signals for you. The reason why this might be beneficial is because you are activating the muscles without straining them too much under external load. And also it's going to increase the muscle activation levels without providing any loading going through the tendons and ligaments, which are going to be more vulnerable to injuries, especially when you're older. So this is a fantastic tactic to be using. You can see that he's using it across the back, across the chest, and also he's doing it whilst doing bicep curls. Improving the strength of the upper limb is going to be really important for Mike Tyson to try and protect the upper limb from injuries. But he doesn't want to be doing like heavy bicep curls, heavy tricep extensions, where he's going to be getting a lot of tension through this elbow joint here. So him doing some bicep curls with the electro pad allow increased activation, increased strength levels of the bicep muscle under a reduced load. And this is something that you can actually achieve not just with the electro pads, but also with blood flow restriction training. Now this is something that I've done a little bit more with Mike Tyson. Don't know whether his team has done this, because it can help increase strength and speed under a reduced amount of load. And this is particularly what he needs being an old athlete, because we're not wanting to increase the load going through them joints. Using BFR training would have been good, but it's good to see electro pads more or less doing the same job that BFR training would do. Really smart move from the team. Okay, we're looking at some of his neck training now. Believe it or not, he's not doing these neck rolls anymore. At 58 years old, that would have been impressive, but it would also been quite dangerous. He's doing it very controlled now, doing it on some sort of machine here. Guy that Mike Tyson's working with here is Tony Brady, who used to work with Andre Ward, so very experienced, very high level strength and conditioning coach. Control flexions and extensions and lateral flexions with like a machine, very controlled, going for higher volume reps here, which is going to be more beneficial. It's going to be protecting the neck, which is going to be obviously important, protecting the spine as well. The neck training, really important, but it's really important to do it in a controlled way. Like I said, at Boxing Science, we promote like some more isometric work, but this work here is going through limited range of motion, a controlled range of motion as well, going for more high volume rather than high intensity. So you can see why this is really going to be good for Mike Tyson's neck strength, especially at 58 years old. Okay, the last clip that we're going to look at is more boxing related, and obviously we've got these impressive pad routines, but obviously these are done in very small bursts. Now, one thing that I've noticed is that he's swapped the heavy bag for the aqua bag. Now this is really important for Mike in particular, because it's going to be reducing the amount of impact forces when working the bag. On the old school clips, he's working the heavy bag, putting everything into every single shot. If he's doing this at 58 years old, the amount of impact forces that the upper limb's going to be exposed to over repeated efforts, you're only going to get injured. So doing the aqua bag is a fantastic way to reduce them impact forces. Now this is not only for people that are 58 years old, but anybody that is struggling with an upper limb injury, whether it's hand injury, elbow, shoulder injury. I always tell boxers to start increasing their training load through the aqua bag before moving on to like heavy bag, to start transitioning under less impact forces. So aqua bag, fantastic tool for Mike Tyson to use here to get his conditioning right, ready for the fight with Jake Paul. Okay, so that's my review and my reaction to Mike Tyson's training methods, the old school versus the new school. I think his team's doing a great job in getting him in the tip-top condition. He looks in fantastic shape going into this fight with Jake Paul. Obviously, there's a lot of controversy whether he should be fighting or shouldn't. Something that I have to massively respect Mike Tyson for is to get himself in this shape and challenging himself still at 58 years old. Obviously, he's getting a few bumps putting his body through this and putting his legacy on the line to be fighting Jake Paul is admirable, even though it's a little bit crazy to get himself into that physical shape at 58 years old. And some of the tips and strategies that he's been using, such as the electro pads, or alternatively BFR training, off-feet conditioning using the aqua bags. If you're a little bit older watching this channel or getting a few different injuries, these might be strategies that you might be wanting to implement within your training. So that's the end of the video. I love doing these reaction videos. We've done a huge range of these. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on future content, and take a look through our Boxing Science YouTube channel, where we've got a range of reaction videos from Canelo, Golovkin, Gervonta Davis, Inoue. Got a range of different fighters that we've analysed their training methods and provided alternatives so you can train like a champion. And if you're wanting to follow one of our training programs, check out the link in the description, where we've got a 50% discount code, Boxing Science 50, for your first purchase of Boxing Science, and also our Train Like a Champion membership, which is only £19.99 per month. So thank you very much for watching. If you're not subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button, and hopefully see you on the next video of Boxing Science.